There's a couple different ways of using a draw board to set the perfect draw length setting. When the bow comes from the factory, the draw length is set on a draw board, which means that we actually physically draw the bow back to the specified draw length. We set the cam, and then we look at the cam and we say, okay, is this within the range specified in your owner's manual, to make sure that we're at least at a reasonable semblance of a close starting point. On this case, we just changed the mods. This is Rob Reynolds' bow. He's actually filming right now. And we looked on the charts, 65-pound eccentric at 28.5. What it reads is 4 1/4 to 4 3/4. What you'll notice is on the bottom cam, there are numbers. On the top cam, there are no numbers. That's another directional change for us. The top cam setting is designed to be allowed to shift around. So we didn't want to confuse people with numbers on the top that had to absolutely correlate, because they are asymmetrical cams. They're not exactly the same. So it's very difficult to get the scales to work perfectly with all the limb deflections and everything else. So we just took them off this year. We know that we want to be, like I said, we looked at our owner's manual. We want to be set. The middle of the range is where we should start. So this one is 4 1/4 to 4 3/4. So we're going to set this right at 4 1/2. Now at 4 1/2, what we mean is we're going to take this screw, and the center of the screw is going to be lined up with the hash mark at 4 1/2. And Clayton's going to move that back so it just won't contact before. You can also set it so it'll free float, so that when you put it on the draw board and you start cranking things up, it'll slide if it comes in contact before the draw stop on the bottom. Remember, your bottom cam is your master cam, so it affects peak weight, draw length. It's tied directly to the yoke cable. I know we said that a couple times, but it's in order to truly understand the cams. Unique feature of this particular draw board is with the containment pegs, you can actually watch the tracking of the nock travel. Some bows, really, as you adjust them, there are small adjustments you can make to really make the nock travel straight. Again, you may get done with that adjustment, and when you look at what the fix marks are, you may say, oh, we're not supposed to be there. Personally, I don't worry about it. If the nock travel is dead straight, the cams are working in unison. We kind of ideally want to get there with Xpedition bows. This is a relatively slow draw board. You can attach an electrical drill to it and work things quickly. The nice thing about this is it works off of worm gear, so you can stop it at any point. It's safe, it's not going to spin out on you, and you don't have to worry about being between the clicks. The worm gear just takes everything up. As we're starting to get close here, and when we get the limb, the bottom, now on your master cam, this is what sets draw length and peak weight. We've already worked with that. You're just going to keep turning this slowly until you get good contact on the limb, and when it does, you look at your draw board. In this case, we have ours set up for true draw length, so it's 26 3/4 plus 1 3/4 gives us 28.5 inches on the 3 1/4 setting, which is exactly where we want to be. Now, the next key part to this, if you want, it's not even if you want, in order to set this correctly, you now move your stop, just slide it up against the limb on your top cam and make sure it's tightened down. By syncing those cams, you now have both of them contacting at exactly the same point. You get that really hard back wall that most people like. It's going to help back tension shooters really pull through the shot a little bit more. You're going to get a little more release movement, make bow shoot faster. Everybody really wants that rock hard wall today, and dual limb stops provide exactly that. It sounds kind of simple, but make sure that you have the same number top and mod bottom. Occasionally we get calls from people who changed one mod and didn't change the other. You're not going to be able to get the bow to tune. It seems kind of obvious, but it's an easy mistake to make. I've done it before myself. So just make sure you've got both mods changed. We changed these to the number 4 mods. It'll say B4 and T4. That'll get 28.5 inches on the draw board. Now, In the owner's manual, there's a draw length range. It gives you the mod to use for the draw length, and then you go to the chart. You have to pick your peak weight, which is marked on the bottom of the bow, and then it'll give you a range. At 28.5 inches, it says that this draw stop needs to be between 3 and 3.5. When you start off, start right in the middle of the range. So if it's between 3 and 3.5, go right to 3 1/4 and see where that gets you. If you don't have a draw board, we're going to show you a little quick way that you can check it with a draw check arrow. It's not as precise, but it'll work. You can work on these bows with just a draw check arrow and a scale by manipulating the posts. If you set that there at the 3 1/4 where it's supposed to be 28.5, then you can manipulate your cables if you have new strings and cables to make sure that you're getting the full rotation of the cam to get you at 28.5. You're not just sliding the cam, the draw stop peg. We're going to keep going back here, and when we get the limb, the bottom, now on your master cam, this is what sets draw length and peak weight. We've already worked with that. You're just going to keep turning this slowly until you get good contact on the limb, and when it does, you look at your draw board. In this case, we have ours set up for true draw length, so it's 26 3/4 plus 1 3/4 gives us 28.5 inches on the 3 1/4 setting, which is exactly where we want to be.